For me, it was like a confirmation that actually, as human beings, we're meant to be in communities. We need one another. And I feel like that's the main difference between here and the West, or where I was like raising my kids, is I felt very alone. And I think it can drive your anxiety because you feel like everything is on you.
I'm Vanessa Canby, and in this video I'm interviewing Bella about her move back from Zurich to Ghana and everything in between. Have you guys had dinner?
Yeah, we had watching.
This is Bella, and she moved back to Ghana from Switzerland recently, less than 6 months ago, was it? Yeah. And so we're going to chat about her relocation, and also we're going to do a house tour of her home, which is beautiful. Like the interior design of this home is so nice. And then we're also going to talk about what she's doing now, the business she works for, and also the companies that she's started. So what made you come back to Ghana?
So I was married. Me and my partner had been talking about moving back to Ghana. We even started researching what it would take to be in Ghana. We started looking at potential businesses to open. Our plan was to move in 3 months. This was in summer.
Okay.
So I came to Ghana on holiday with the kids. It was the first time ever. My partner decided it was time to go our separate ways.
Okay.
I was living in Zurich, Switzerland. My dad is Swiss, but I grew up here, so here was home for me. So I always wanted my kids raised here. I always wanted to come back and start something here. So I just, now is the time, now is the opportunity. And ironically, it was a year of return. Stars have aligned, it's time to return.
You were born in Ghana, were you?
Yes, I was born in Ghana, raised in Ghana until I was 19. My dad is Swiss, my mom is Guinean. They were both living in Ghana with us. There's 3 other siblings, way older than me. And I was actually the only child out of the 4 kids that lived this long in Ghana. Majority of them left with like 14, 16. So I'm the most Guinean. My siblings would kill me for this. My siblings went to one school their whole life here, the Swiss school. Yeah. I was in 5 different schools. So my network is very, very large.
How are you in so many different schools?
So I started in the Swiss school. Then I went to a local school called Claire, which is not far from my house now. Nice. Then I went to Roman Ridge, which is in the Ridge area. And then I went to TIS, which is a boarding school in Tema, because my parents lived in Tema. Okay. So it was like it was more convenient, and I was in boarding school. And then I left and I was in AIS, American International School, which is also right around the corner. And then I graduated from Lincoln.
Oh my gosh, how did you literally have the experience of like almost every school.
Every sort of schooling system, every sort of like class in Ghana in terms of like how people live in different ways as well. So that's why I'm saying like, so when my siblings were in the Swiss school, when I was in the Swiss school, it's quite an isolated scenario because you're with expats and you're learning a different language than the local spoken language. Yeah. So I had a very broad experience of what it meant to be a Guinean in different kind of scenarios. So that's why also I think home is really here, because I understand the different layers to Ghana in that sense. And so the thing is that you have obviously the expats, which are non-Ghanaians that are living in Ghana. I relocated here for work, majority for work actually. There's hardly anyone that comes on holiday and then decides to just move here. Most people discover Ghana through work. They don't even know anything about Ghana until they land. So that's one kind of society. Then you have the society of the kids that grew up with wealth here, and they probably don't know too much about the local person that is experience. So it's also very isolating, but at the same time their parents are still trying to involve them in the Guinean culture as much as possible because they're Guineans. Mm-hmm. Then you have the Ghanaians, the diaspora, the ones that grew up abroad and then came back at some point in their life, whether it was as a teenager, as a child, or even later. And then you have a local Ghanaian set, the working class Ghanaians, that are trying to make it in their lives or are content with the sort of life that they have offered. Mm-hmm. Very grateful kind of people, and they take life very simple, very easy. And then you have also the Ghanaians that are really struggling. You have the people that maybe live in a community like Nima, and they're basically living day to day, surviving. So when I went to all those different schools, I had all those different scenarios. Majority of the schools that I actually went to, they were startups when I started at them. So my parents had heard about them because maybe they were Christian schools and they wanted me in the Christian society, or they were local schools that were starting up, but they had like very good, like the way they taught the kids was very fast forward.
Okay, yeah, they were.
Yeah, but I mean, K. Clare, for example, is a school now where it's not upper class, but it's like it's way more upper class than it was back in the day. But back in the day, it was like you were caned, you know. So
when you were there.
Yeah. So and I was the first mixed race kid in that class in school. So you can imagine the experience I had coming out of Swiss school, and all of a sudden I'm getting like whipped for the randomest things. So I've had every scenario possible. Same thing with TIS. It's a very upscale school now. When it started out, it was a very normal school. You had entrance exams to get in. You had uniforms, and it was like boarding school life. So I also know what it's like for people that were like in Achimota, you know. So I can relate on many levels in that sort of way. Yeah.
So does that then influence the way you want your kids to be schooled, because you actually have so much schooling experience?
Definitely. Because also it wasn't much of a culture shock moving to Zurich, but it was sort of getting used to things that I knew existed outside of Ghana. And I don't want to be killed for this, but I sort of feel like the kids that grew up here, even the upper class ones, the ambition, the drive, the gratefulness for life is just different.
I guess because you see, like when you're in, I've never been to Zurich, but for example, in Edinburgh, you don't see the struggle as much. Whereas here, like you do see struggle every single day.
Yeah, the struggle is different. And at least the way I grew up and the things I was exposed to, I was very aware of the struggle that goes on outside of my car, my AC card, you know. And I also grew up in Tema, which a lot of the kids I went to school with grew up in Accra. That's already a vast difference, because my house was a beautiful 12 villa house, but then you stepped outside and there were people living in shacks. So I was very aware growing up of those things, and I always wanted my kids to be aware of an experience outside of their own. Whereas in Zurich, there's sort of like this isolation, and people make a ton of money in Zurich, and the kids obviously have desires that maybe are not necessities to life. So yeah, I was very excited to raise my kids here.
Back.
Definitely.
And so how have they adapted to moving on?
But I think, to be honest, she's integrating probably even better.
That's so good.
I think also the age, and she eats like a Guinean. Like,
even when she was in Zurich?
Even when she was in Zurich. I was the kind of mom, I was making light soup once a week. I was making okra soup twice a week. Like, my kids were eating very Ghanaian as well as very European. She's used to the platter. Pepperhead, like I need spiciness in my life. I cannot go one meal without shito or kebab pepper or something, you know. And now I didn't know that about her until I moved here. And now it's like I go get a chichinga, which is a kebab roadside. And she's going crazy. Like she'll yell and scream until she has it in her hand.
I don't even think I could do that, let alone.
Very integrated, you know, and even like the expressions now, like after 5 months, it's like somebody's having juicy conversation and she's standing nearby and she's like, oh, and she hardly speaks, so you can imagine. And ironically, she's blonde and has very fair skin, you know, so it's surprising for a lot of people to like then see me and be like, what? And then Nyla, actually, I think until she started school, it was a bit of a struggle. She hadn't made friends yet. We were living with my mom in the first phase of like moving to Ghana. And my mom never had like her grandkids around, so she had to get used to that as well. But I think once she started school, she started building her community. Then my mom's friends also have grandchildren that she was hanging out with. And then I think the cherry on top of the cake was when we moved here, because it's a neighborhood sort of scenario, and every second door there's a child around her age.
Yeah,
so they play in the courtyard and all that. Yeah, so she's very happy because she gets that social release that she didn't get in Zurich. And Nyla is very bubbly and she speaks to everyone, and so she's
so
happy
cute.
here. She's really happy here. Yeah, they definitely integrated well.
And another thing about Ghana that I've known about since I've been coming is a lot of people have house helps or nannies, drivers, cooks, you know, a lot of staff basically. And how has that change been for you? Have you chosen to have a nanny? You know, how is it actually being in the house and having somebody else help to look after your kids?
In the West, because everybody's in their own space, in their own lives, they see family once in a while. They get that help once in a while. It's not a constant. Anyone can just knock at your door. People have to call before they come. So everybody's so individualized that even family becomes individualized and isolated. So it sort of becomes this thing that when you have help, then it's sort of like, well, you must be spoiled, or you must not be parenting. So I was a bit like this when I moved here. Like I was very reluctant to get any help, but I think based on the situation I was in when I came, I realized very fast that no, I can't do this alone. Like already having my mom around was proof that I needed help. And then as well, I came and I was 20 kilos more than I was before childbirth, because Bobby was still breastfeeding. She was 1.5, and I wanted to go to the gym. And it's like that kind of stuff. It can't happen here unless you have family or you have help. So now all of a sudden, my mom was helping me, and then her help at home was helping me. So it was very releasing. Like knew somebody in the village that brought them. So it's like there's always this network and this like trust that you basically build. You know, it's not a stranger.
Family way sometimes.
Exactly. And the other thing is, like in Europe, when you have a daycare, you maybe get an interview for like 30 minutes with the people that are taking care of your kids. You're at work for majority of the time, but you feel like you're in control because it's an institution. Whereas here, it's sort of like learn as you go. Somebody becomes a part of your family. They start to learn about your kids. So I feel like there's more sense of community here. So I feel more relaxed doing it here.
See, when you put it like that in terms of like childcare in the UK, it actually just changes it, even in my head, because you realise that, like, I mean, my kids go to like daycare, and really and truly, the people change. Like,
I mean, you do get help also in the West, but I think because you pay an enormous amount for that help, you feel like it's an institution. And so there's some sort of reliability and things are under control, but stuff still happens, you know? To be honest, that whole facade of like, oh wait, no, you're not raising your kids if you have house, it demolished, because I can tell you honestly, they're there to help, but they're not there to raise your kids. Like, I know a lot of people who have house helps and they rely on the house helps to raise their kids in some sense, but they quickly learn you're raising your own kids, you know?
Because it's not going to be the way that you actually want.
It's not going to be the way, and everybody has like expectations and wishes and hopes for and dreams for their kids, and you cannot rely on somebody else that's being paid to do those things for you. So you quickly learn. My mom always said, please, even if you have house help, make these 3 things your priority. Bath time, when they wake up in the morning, the first person they see is you, and bedtime. Those are the 3 things, at the very least, anybody needs to like have full control of. Never hand that over to somebody else. And I fully understand it. Because those are bonding periods. Yeah. So, and I mean, you know, help here is different in terms of how much you pay versus in Europe. I'll give you a good example. So in Switzerland, I was paying for daycare 4 times a week when I went back to work. Not even 4 times a week. It was, I think, 3 times a week. I was paying close to about $3,000. That was a month. And now that Nyla is in school, I don't even pay that much in
for
6 months. You know, and it's private schooling. So it tells you how much of a release you have. Obviously, we earn different here, so that's not another factor to like bear in mind. But some people, like, I've heard horror stories. Some people treat like their house helps really bad, you know. And like, for example, I refrain from saying house girl or maid. I call them helpers, because for me, honestly, it's a big help compared to like how I was before. And for me, the other thing that changed, that switched with me when I moved here, was I was a high functioning OCD.
Oh.
Like, I had anxiety through the roof, really badly. And I remember coming here, and already like in the first week, my mom's helper at the house, she was jumping in automatically to help me because that's what she knows how to do. And I would fight her because I needed that control. And I think my OCD played out after I had kids. When I came here, and I was not in control, because Ghana has tons of reminders that you're just not in control. And people are very religious here as well. So I always think there's a higher power than you in control. They remind you constantly. And then you have help, which reminds you that it's fine to relax. Like, somebody else can do the same job that you think you're the only person that can do. So I think in like a month's time, I just felt my body relax.
That's amazing.
I cannot explain to you, like, I just didn't care anymore if it was dirty. I just didn't care anymore if bedtime didn't happen at a certain time. Like, and my kids had so much more fun. And I could see, like, they were so happy. Like, mom is not, like, stressed. Mom is not telling us, now we have to go to bed. Now we have to wake up. Now we need to clean after ourselves. And so for me, it was, like, a confirmation that actually, as human beings, we're meant to be in communities. We need one another. And I feel like that's the main difference between here and the West, or where I was, like, raising my kids, is I felt very alone. And I think it can drive your anxiety because you feel like everything is on you. And here it's like, even if you want to do it alone, people are constantly reminding you, you're not alone. Like, I had it's really nice. And I mean, I had best friends, and like even just friends that I knew from school, creating a WhatsApp group called Playdate, and organizing all these be with my kids and wanting to spend time. I have friends that just like don't call, they knock on the door, they're here, they play with my kids for like an hour. And these are people that don't have kids, you know, so
Whereas, I don't think you get so much of that.
Like, I only met my neighbors. I didn't know most of my neighbors when I was in Zurich. I only met like my neighbor at the end when I came back to pack my stuff to leave.
Well, hi and bye at the same time.
Yeah, you know, like, I was lucky my sister was my neighbor, so I had one person at least in the building. But it's like, even like getting your mail from the box, you're like, I don't want to have those conversations. Like, I just want to live my own life, you know. And then it's like, here it's like, you walk out to get into your car and the neighbor is like, hey Bella, and then it's like, how are the kids? Are the kids fine? They should come over and play the next time. And then by the time, you know, you're having an hour conversation, but you're enjoying it.
That socialization.
Definitely.
I think people here are just so much more open to conversation. The thing I really love about Ghanaians is how honest they are. So like, if they've got an issue, they're just going to say it, which
I love the directness.
Yeah, because in like other countries in the West, like the UK, well. You hold it in, and then you explode, or you're just being like horrible. Just say what you mean, and that's what they do here, and I just love it.
I mean, it can backfire on you as well, because sometimes it's unsolicited advice. You're living your best life. Somebody's like, sit down. But it's good. It keeps you humble. It keeps you in check. It reminds you that other people care about you, and even if they don't care about you, they have something to say, and you have the privilege to say something too. That's a good thing, you know. Whereas it's like, when I was there, I felt like I would offend somebody if I said something, or you know. And like, my neighbors are generally like concerned people. Like, I'll have them like knock on the door, be like, do you have a bit of time? And then I'll be like, yeah. They'll come over for a tea. They'll ask me what's going on in my life, if there's any way in which they can help. Like,
it's really nice.
It's nice. It's really nice. And it's something that I grew up with. So I'm just happy like my kids get to grow up with that as well. Like, understand that there's community. There's more beyond myself, you know. And I'm not just living for myself and my own happiness. If I give somebody else that sort of happiness in their lives, it should be happy. You know, I'm not losing anything. Somebody might be a bit happier today because I did something for them, you know, or I was there for them. Joy just surged, you know. And there's a difference here, like in Zurich. I feel like purpose is the biggest thing. Purpose and being content and being grateful. Like, happiness for us takes a backseat. As long as we're
comes and goes, and
it comes and goes. It's an emotion. It's fleeting. So we don't really rely on that as compasses for anything. We rely on purpose. If I know I was meant to do this with my life and I have hardship, it's fine because there's purpose. You know?
The boundaries and like knowing that they're going to come when they come.
Definitely, but that's what
You're getting somewhere.
That's what I was saying was the main difference between like the kids that I saw grew up in that culture in Switzerland versus here. Is like here, even if you grew up really rich, you understand that your parents had to struggle for that. So there's some sort of gratefulness for it. Like even if people don't see it, you don't want to screw up.
Yeah.
And obviously there's pressure to it as well, but I think people make more of their lives when they have purpose and they're grateful for the things. Whereas if everything is about happiness and myself and
and then when you're not happy, you're questioning why am I not happy, and then it gets into a whole sort of like spiral. So when you actually moved back here and you were looking for a flat, how was that process?
So I looked online.
Okay.
Majority of the in the beginning I was looking online at apartments. I had a few friends that would like throw out suggestions. I drive there. The thing in Ghana is you don't have to make appointments.
Or you just arrive.
You just arrive. Like I'm in the neighborhood. I saw an empty apartment. I drove there. I knocked on the door. Hey guys, is that apartment empty? Yeah, come and look at it. You know. But obviously, like if you go to like a gated community and stuff, they might look at you sideways, like, why are you just arriving here? You know. So I did that a bunch of times, but it was pretty fast because I had a friend that was in real estate. He's like, this is the number of the guy who treats you very well. He knows exactly what kind of thing you're looking for, and they'll find it. Thing is, agency fees are expensive here.
So what happens when you find a place? You have to pay them as well.
If they find you a place,
okay,
then you have to pay them 1 month of rent.
On top of the rent?
Yeah. And mind you, in Ghana, it's not monthly rent. It's year rent. So if you're moving to Ghana, have your bank account savings ready. Because it's a bulk that goes out each time. And if you renew your contract, chances are maybe they'll reduce it to 6 months from a year to 2 years.
Okay.
But you're still paying bulk out. So you always have to have some sort of like savings. And then there were other things like the schooling, for example. It was also bulk payments. You pay for the whole year in advance. Yeah. In the school Nyla went to, I paid for the first 6 months of the first semester. I paid that semester, and then at the end of that semester, I had to pay for the next half semester, of the year. Yeah. So it was a bit easier with them, but the registration fees are expensive. So they have registration fees, administrative fees, they have uniforms, all this. It can build up real fast. Yeah. But private schooling, for example, in Switzerland is an easy 30,000, 35,000 a year.
Or euros?
Dollars a year. Euros, actually, because Swiss franc is extra.
Because I feel like Zurich, that's like one of the most expensive places in the world.
Yeah, so it's not a good comparison to the rest of the world.
It's your experience. So coming here, it's been actually a...
No, but I realized, like, it's hit me. Like, I think living in Zurich for so long, I was living there for 10 years. I think at some point I started to feel like, oh, this is normal.
Yeah.
And I think also because I didn't have like a social network of, like I had a lot of friends living in different places in Europe, in America, even South America and Asia, but we weren't comparing.
Mm-hmm. So you were just like, this is
my bubble. This is normal. And then I moved here and I'm like, wait, what?
Did you feel like everything was so much cheaper?
Yeah, but it's also very expensive in comparison to when I grew up.
Okay.
Like, it's like I go grocery shopping like once a week, once a month to the market, because I can just buy everything in bulk and without containers and all that. I can bring my own containers. So at the market, I'll spend like 500 for the whole month.
Dollars?
No.
Oh, Ghana
cedis for the whole month. And I mean, I'm buying fish, I'm buying grains, all kinds of different grains. Even fonio. Fonio is something also, it's like hardly used anymore, but it's like a couscous. And it's a local produce.
Delicacy.
Yeah. And yeah, so I pay like 500. If I go one time grocery shopping in a week for like a yogurt or like almond milk, I pay like
to like Koala or Max Mart. Where do you use? What shop?
So Max Mart majority of the time. But you can imagine I pay like an easy 1,000 CDs. One walk
For just like a couple of bits.
Just for a couple
you might
of bits,
need.
you know, and these are things that maybe my kids have been used to in Switzerland that they don't necessarily need, but it's like a treat for them.
Yeah.
It's comfort because my kids don't do dairy. The only dairy they do is yogurt.
Okay.
But it's because of the probiotics, for example. But that's something that maybe I can't get like in the market space, so I have to buy it there. But I buy made in Ghana yogurt, and it's still expensive. So you can imagine, you know. So it's like if I would live very local in terms of the way we eat, and maybe we have European food like once a week in my household.
It would be really affordable.
It'd be very affordable. But the problem is because, well, it's not a problem. I want to make sure that their palates are still pretty diverse in a sense, and they're getting what they need. So sometimes I have to splurge. So yeah, so an easy 1,000 a week. And that's not like eating out or anything like that. So you can imagine.
On top of the 500 Ghana cedis.
Yeah.
So
if you want to,
like 4,500
on
Ghana
food,
cedis just on
yeah, I spend about 4,000 Ghana cedis on food a week, on a month, and that's without eating out. So you can imagine.
And then when you eat out, for people that might not know, like how much, if it's just like you and the kids.
If it's just me and the kids, oh, that's not too expensive. It's like maybe 100 Ghana cedis to eat out. But then again, we're eating very local.
Yeah.
Like if I go to like a Coco Lounge, which is a very
sort of
upper class place, I'd pay maybe like 300 Ghana cedis for me and my kids, you know. But my kids don't do fast food, for example. They the fast. Bobby had her first taste of like fast food when we came here, and it was like I didn't have a household yet. They wanted something different. I was like, let's just do something different. So we did that, but that's expensive. Like,
so how much do you think approximately?
So if you go to like a KFC here, you're spending about 200 Ghana cedis.
So then it's like actually not affordable to people that are not making.
Which is ironic because like in Switzerland, like the fast food is very affordable.
Do you know what? This is a very interesting topic because I saw this thing that was saying here it's a luxury. So people save up to go to a fast food restaurant.
Family day out to go to KFC, and it's like.
And people don't want, a lot of people don't want it here because they're like, you're actually just bringing your like terror food.
Like I've heard stories where there's certain like fast food people, I won't mention names, like even the meat they import. So it's not even like Kenyan
from Ghana
produce, you know what I mean? So you're eating maybe something that's completely like American, like a 1-to-1 meal in the States, for example. You don't know what's in there.
And so, you know what's weird? I remember back in maybe like 10, 15 years ago, one of these fast food chains wanted to come, but they couldn't produce enough, I think it was chickens at the time, in the country, and so they couldn't open. But now they've obviously changed the laws, so now they can get around it so that they can bring everything in.
But my kids, we eat very local. If it's like I'm eating out, maybe it's like a girls' night out, and then I'm going out with my friends, but my kids don't really eat in restaurants. Like, if we eat out, it's roadside food.
Yeah.
And it's a woman that I know since I'm a kid that's still cooking on the side, you know? And me, I'm the kind of person, like, get all that bacteria in your body. Let's, like, let's get used to, like, Ghanaian life as fast as possible.
Like, you can get ill if you eat just anything.
If you're in a bubble for too long, when that bubble bursts, like, your kid gets really sick, it's really bad. Whereas my kids are constantly exposed to those things with measure, obviously, because I don't want them to get like cholera or typhoid or something, you know. But my kids are still being exposed to local living in that way.
So moving on to what you do. So what is it you do here in Ghana? Okay,
so I work for a company called Train Talent. We're doing customer service training and hospitality services. So instead of doing like the HR section of hiring and firing, we're concentrating more on developing people. So in Ghana, we have a problem with customer service. Let's just be very honest. A meal that should take like 20 minutes to be on your table takes maybe like an hour.
Do you know what? I put this in a video before, and like a lot of people got angry, and I was like, please just come and tell
Experience
me.
it, and you'll see for
Like,
yourself.
there's some places that do it really well.
Yeah, some places that are
very
points, but they're
few.
upper class places. Let's be very honest,
Yeah.
where you're paying a lot to be there, and you're paying also for service charges to be sitting there. But
Generally.
yeah. But there's no like sort of standard to the way we do customer service in this country, and our whole thing is about, we want your employees to be comfortable and happy in their workplace. So that's what we're trying to promote.
Okay.
Workplace happiness, because people that are happy in their workplace, they function better, and the companies strive and they can achieve more. So that's what I'm doing right now. For me, it's like a luxury, because I used to be in fashion management, retail management, and I had to do all these different things: visual merchandising, HR, people development, stock analysis, buying, like statistics about sales. All like, it was so vast.
Such a broad
spectrum. And now it's like I get to concentrate on one thing, and the best thing for me is when I work with people. I love it. I love like really hearing the stories, and like getting to know somebody's character and how to navigate them and how to make them feel like they're achieving more and purpose. Mm-hmm. So that's what I'm doing as my day job. And I'm doing it with somebody that's almost like a best friend of mine since I've moved here. So my bosses and me are very close. Like, she makes me a smoothie in the morning. She makes me salad for lunch. Like, we're very close. We hang out sometimes on the weekends together. That's the other thing. It's like, work life here is very different in the way you relate. Casual. It's very casual.
Like, I had another interview with Guido. Mm-hmm. People do like work transactions over WhatsApp, whereas that's something that just never could happen.
Nope.
We're at like emails. I was trying to email people, trying to schedule things. It just wasn't working.
No. Like in Switzerland, for example, the thing is that we work so much in Switzerland that the people you work with become almost your friends.
Yeah.
But it's like by default. It's not because you've chosen to be friends with them. Whereas here, it's like you have the choice to not be friends with the people you work with, because you have a community outside of work. And here, when work ends at 4 or 5, everybody forgets that they work. Like, everybody's just like chill, like, we ain't gonna talk about work, we're chill. And I'm from the Swiss culture where it's like, I'm thinking about work constantly.
All the time.
So like, I go out into a new environment, I'm thinking, how can this work out for work, So I had to learn how to switch off, or like, friends would be like, so what did you do today? And I'm talking about work. And they're all like, you didn't do anything for lunch, like you didn't have any phone calls, any conversations outside of work, So I had to get used to that. But it's definitely different doing business here. Like, you need to have that charisma, you need to have that human touch when you go into meetings. Like, people don't like walking in and being like, okay, this is what I provide. Here, A, B, and C, choose, buy. Like, people want to know you, they want to have conversation. Yeah. But it makes work interesting. And so that's what I do as a day job. Side hustle is the Chalet Sisters. So it's a company that me and my sister opened. We have,
the Chalet.
Yeah, so we have 3 lines. The first one is home. So it's like the stuff you saw in my home decoration, furniture. Then we have Pekin. So Pekin is like a pidgin word for kid. So it's a line where we have like stuffed animals. We have like smaller miniature baskets for the kids. We're even we're designing right now like a hut, like a village hut.
Like a life size or small? No,
like a small one, but as a playhouse.
Such a nice idea.
Yeah, but the characters are like in traditional clothing, all of that. So we want to make sure that playtime for the kid still has all these Ghanaian elements, that they get represented
like
in
culture.
The things. Yeah, the culture gets promoted. And then the last line we have is takeaway. And takeaway is like handbags that we have that were woven out of like elephant grass. That's the biggest thing for us. That's what we majority use in Ghana for baskets.
Oh, I didn't know that's
called elephant grass. And it's because when the elephants used to stamp on the grass, like grass bounced back because it's so tough, So very durable things. Obviously with a bit of a Swiss touch and Swiss design, but very local in the sense of material is sourced here. It's made by local artisans. it's representing our culture, which is very, very much what me and my sister are all about. We want to promote the culture.
And
it's sustainable because we're not doing anything with any material that doesn't naturally grow here in abundance, and the people don't know how to work with, and it can go back into the earth. So yeah.
So I've seen on your Unwrapped family that you're all about sort of sustainability and zero waste.
Yeah.
How has that been in Ghana? Like, is it possible to be living that sort of life here?
I think it's completely possible, but you have to, let's say, for a lot of people, lower your standards. So you have to shop locally, but not locally in terms of like a supermarket. Like you have to go into the dead of a market and find things in bulk. But it's the same habits. You bring along your own bag, you bring your own container along. When you go out, like for a drink somewhere, maybe bring a straw, you say to a straw. Like it's still the same mentality you have to like reproduce here. And I feel like, honestly, people are not as resistant as people might assume. Like I've had a lot of conversations with people like, oh, but they just don't get it. And I'm like, that's not true. Like I've been to a cafe where I've brought my own cup and no one has ever said no. Whereas in Europe, there's a bunch of places I brought my stuff to and it's like, no, we have our own takeaway. Or policy says we can't put our meat in your container.
Oh,
and
in
here
case something happens. And then
and here it's like, oh, your own container, no problem. They'll put it in. But there is a few things like, but I think that's just our culture. Like I have to explain to them that don't put it in means don't put it in the plastic and then take it out and then give it to me. Like I don't want it at all. Like you have to. For me, it's completely sustainable. The only thing that is not possible here is with the cars, like public transport. Unfortunately, you do need to get a car here. Unfortunately, electrical cars don't exist here.
Do you know what? I've seen a Tesla here.
I've seen a Tesla too, but that person has a plug in their house. You know what I mean? Like, unless you have the cash flow.
Yeah, no, and it's expensive. And can you imagine something happened? Can you imagine? You would just be stuck on the road, and the car's just left there for probably months.
They wouldn't know what to do. They wouldn't know what to do.
Even in Edinburgh, I feel like we're not quite there yet with like fixing electric cars.
Yeah, Switzerland's on point with that.
Oh,
I mean, at the petrol stations, you have the plugs and everything.
That's so good.
So it's on point. But here, with that kind of stuff, we have to wait a bit.
Even if you've got like a car, like a BMW or something, you still have to wait for parts to come in. And that can take like months.
Definitely. But there's a lot more, let's say, companies here trying to do things as well to make it more sustainable. The other thing for me, like at some point I was realizing when I was living there, I was covering stories about what was going on here instead of in the Swiss community of like zero waste and all of that. Like I was covering more about here. So for me, when I moved back, it was like a no-brainer. Like I already had contact with about 5 different organizations here that were promoting that, or even like entrepreneurs or companies that were doing the recycling, doing like a big one for me is Plastic Punch. They do beach cleanups like almost every weekend. They go to schools, they teach about recycling and not only recycling, like avoiding from the beginning. How you can refuse from the start, which for me, low waste and zero waste is all about that. How much can I refuse until I have to compromise? That's one of them. Then the Or is Present is another organization that I went, and I think you also went to that.
Yeah, I went to the beach cleanup.
In
so there'll be a video on my YouTube channel.
Yeah, so I documented at the very end of it. But the Or is Present, I interviewed them, I think last year, when I was living in Zurich.
For the blog.
About the Kanto-Manto market and secondhand market and all of that. So that's also interesting that it's not just about waste in terms of plastic, because they're doing a lot with fashion. So it's very interesting as well. So I feel like there's a lot of potential here. We haven't gone too far from our traditional ways yet. So it's very easy for us to return back to those ways. Like I was having a conversation with somebody today. And they were saying, so we don't have a lot of retail stores here in terms of fashion yet. I was like, actually, it's a good thing because it's not been infiltrated yet. I mean, majority...
And there's local fabrics and there's seamstress.
But then also the print companies that were made in Ghana, wax prints, were dying out, like GT. GTP, which is the biggest producers of like wax print made in Ghana, they sold out, and Woodin took over, which was a Dutch company that was producing to look like it was Ghanaian, but it's made in Holland.
Oh, I didn't even know.
Yeah. If you go to like a Salvation Army or you go to a secondhand shop and you think you're doing the best thing to put your clothes there, just know that it's probably getting sold off here. Like, it's not charity.
Or being dumped in the sea here.
And it's being
that's
dumped
what that's what I learned when I went to that beach
It's being
cleanup.
illegally dumped here too. So use your clothes for as long as possible. Reuse your clothes. But I was having this conversation. I was saying, you know, the tradition here, if you have a Ghanaian grandmother, is when you pass it, you tear fabrics. When my grandmother passed away in May and I came to visit, everybody in the family got a clothing piece of hers. And the thing is, it's not something you get and you're just like, okay, whatever. Like, majority of us will like cut it down to our size, or maybe just make the fabric into a scarf. Like, we have still that tradition, and that tradition comes from the village, because it's like your grandmother's clothing stayed with
like
you.
Sort of like inheritance.
It's a huge amount of inheritance, and we still have that tradition. So I was saying that for me, there's more hope for us to become sustainable, because there's still a culture of sustainability, even if we're starting to idolize the West too much. Which I think that's where the issue comes here with sustainability, is like we've started to idolize too much of Western culture and moved away from traditional culture, and that's why we have this waste issue. Like, disposables, when I was growing up in the 90s here, it became like a sign of being rich. Because imagine, the average person here cannot afford to have cutlery that they throw away all the time. Like, it's like when you got something, you kept onto it. And now all of a sudden you had the rich people coming in, throwing parties, and now it's like, I have disposables.
That's mad. You know, when you don't even think about it like that.
You don't, but then I slowly saw it as a child, you know? So for me, it's only happened like in the last 10 years, 15 years. Whereas in Europe, in the West, it's happened since the 1950s. So for me, there's a lot more hope for it to change, but obviously there's policy changes that need to happen. But then you look at the African continent, and we have 20 countries, for example, that banned plastic.
Yes,
and it's the most progressive continent in the world in terms of trying to fight single-use waste. So I know there's potential. People that are doing work here, I love to support them, because I know they're doing work that is needed. We ship out our waste to other countries to deal with, and we only see it maybe if we go on holidays and we're with the locals, like in Bali. But we have no immediate impact, whereas here you have an immediate impact on your environment because the ocean's right next to you.
You can see it as well.
You can see
the problem.
Yeah, so there's no denying. So when I go to the market and the woman's trying to give me a plastic bag and I say no, and first she might not get it, and then I say, do you see what's happening? Like, every time there's like a rainfall here, your market gets flooded. And then she'll be like, yeah, it's true. And the next time she sees me, she remembers me as the woman with the fabric bags. You know, so I feel like there's more of an impact to be made here, and it's home. So wherever home is that you make an impact, it stays with you longer and feels more purpose. Definitely, your own backyard.